Hello, this is Todd Luck, and this is a review of Maid, Catacombs of the Moon, #1 by American Mythology. So, a little bit of backstory. American Mythology has the rights to do some of the lesser known properties of Edgar Rice Burroughs, who is the creator of John Carter of Mars and Tarzan. And so they're doing Carson of Venus, Blue Star at the Earth's Core, and The Land That Time Forgot. And they are also doing Maid, and this is the first one shot they put out of the character. This was part of the Fear on Four Worlds crossover event that they did. And I reviewed this in a previous video, and in that video I said Mike Wolfer wrote their Edgar Rice Burroughs comics, and he had a good grasp on the basics of Burroughs, the intensity and the action and the suspense. Now, where I was wrong in that was that in Fear on Four Worlds, they actually peppered in a new writer who wrote a couple issues, and I didn't even realize it. So Christopher Mills wrote Maid in one of the other issues. And so what I said about Wolfer in that review applies to Christopher Mills. And so he wrote the Maid one-shot, and Gabriel Riarte did the artwork, and I quite enjoyed it. And so both these gentlemen are back for Maid, Catacombs of the Moon. And so this picks up where the one-shot left off. The artwork is still quite good, and I think it flows, it looks nice. There are some panels here and there where it could be better, but overall it's just a nice looking comic book that I enjoyed reading. So the writing is simple but solid. The miniseries picks up where the one-shot left off. So there is a world inside the moon called Vanos, and this world has its own atmosphere, its own monsters, its own people. And so there is a princess who is the title character. Maid just means woman, you know, it's just an old-timey term. There's a princess called Nahila. And so Nahila has been cooped up her entire life in the palace because it's dangerous to go outside. And so she wants to go on a hunt to experience the world outside. And of course things go wrong, and she's chased by monsters, she's chased by men, and it's just a very classic kind of Burroughs story. And one of the things I found refreshing about it that I'm finding in the Burroughs novels, and I really wasn't quite sure how they would deal with a princess in this story, because if you read Dija Torres over at Dynamite, you know, they basically deal with her like an action hero. Like, you know, she's an expert sword fighter and she can run around blasting bad guys with guns and all this stuff. This miniseries is actually dealing with a princess from a Burroughs novel, similar to how Burroughs would write them. And so the princesses were not action heroes. They didn't have any type of superhuman powers. They weren't expert sword fighters. They weren't jumping around with two guns blazing and all this stuff. They were basically normal people, and if they got in a bad situation, they were as screwed as you would be. You know, if Tarzan or John Carter face a lion, they're going to fight that lion and probably win because they're the heroes. They're going to just improbably be able to defeat anything that comes at them. They're going to, you know, fight their way through a dozen armed men. But if you put a princess in those novels in the same situation, and again, this is like early 20th century, you know, 1911 was when Burroughs started doing this stuff. They are pretty screwed because they don't have those, you know, superhuman fighting prowess and all this stuff that the heroes do. So it's so much more interesting to me how the princess gets out of these situations. I just got through Thuvia, Maid of Mars, and Chessmen of Mars, two Burroughs novels set in the Barsoom series. And they really focused on the princesses, and I was really engaged. I really wanted to know how they were going to survive and get out of those situations. Now, they do tend to be pretty good with a knife, though. They do tend to stab their captors to death a lot. But we'll see if Nyla gets any opportunities to do that in this particular story. But the story just seems to be very well paced. It seems to be something that they can contain in a little miniseries and still make it satisfying. Now, I have no idea how long this miniseries is. The Last Carson of Venus was 3 issues, and that tends to be how long their miniseries are, but we'll see if this one maybe goes a little longer. I would love more issues of this, but regardless, I'm glad we have it. And so while we're at it, let's take a look at her costume. So in the novel, she's described as wearing a gossamer tunic, and it goes barely to her knees. It can fly up and expose her thigh. Here, her thigh is always exposed, a little bit of artistic license. And this plunging neckline down to her belly is a bit of artistic license. It's definitely revealing, but it's no more revealing than, say, Starfire from the 80s, or Vampirella, who you can see over my shoulder. Definitely kind of in that vein. It's just a sort of swimsuit kind of attire that women in comics have worn, for better or worse, for a long time. But what it does is it looks like an alien princess, and it is certainly trying to keep with what was in the novels, so I think it's pretty good. Okay, so let's talk about this cover. So first of all, compliments. Beautiful colors, beautiful rendering. This guy could have done a fantastic cover. But I got a couple gripes here. One is the costume. This isn't what she's wearing in the interior. This is way too thin. It looks like some type of really risque swimsuit that only someone in a Sports Illustrated shoot would wear. And it just doesn't look like a tunic. She doesn't look like a princess. And it just makes it look like she's a character who's just there to be naked and for you to ogle at. And that's not what this story is about, and not what this comic is about at all. So I think, I just wish that they'd been able to capture her look better on that cover. Because unfortunately, a cover like this, and it's not uncommon with the Burroughs stuff. I mean, you look at some of the Dejah covers, and they're, but the problem with this is you're very, very much narrow casting who this comic is for. So a lot of people are just going to think it's a comic that I'll go at a woman, and they're not going to pick it up. And for those of us who do know the subject matter and do pick it up, we can't display it on our shelves. We can't, show it to other people, in mixed company, because, this cover just looks like something else. I mean, I can say it's a great adventure comic, but all you're sitting there is looking at this woman in this weird monokini. So, and also I thought the storytelling was also a little off on this cover as well. For instance, she doesn't seem to know how to hold a sword at all. I mean, it's just which is weird. And I don't know what this guy is doing. Is he going to attack her? Is he a friend that's guarding her? Or maybe he's on a hunt. Maybe there's an animal down here that he's about to spear or something. I don't know. I don't know what's going on this cover. So I just felt like, you had a really talented artist here, and I feel like he could have delivered a cover that is much more in keeping with the look and the story that's on the interior. But other than some minor gripes about the cover, I think this is a really good comic that's well worth picking up, especially because Maid just hasn't had that many comics. Other than the one shot in this miniseries, the Moon trilogy of Edgar Rice Burroughs is considered, honestly, one of his best works, or the best work. But other than what American Mythology is just putting out right now, and this Tarzan miniseries from back in the 90s, there's been nothing done with the Moon trilogy in comics. So, and honestly, I really recommend picking this one up too. It's got nothing to do with the Maid. This actually deals with the invasion of Earth that happens in the later novels, which is one of the things that makes the Moon trilogy so unique. Now, that's actually not dealt with in the American Mythology comics because it's a prequel to the Burroughs novels, so the Moon Men have not invaded Earth. And I wonder if they'll get around to that, because I think that would be really interesting if they wanted to do basically what Dynamite is doing with the Mars series, where they have Dejah Thoris at, in the far past before she meets John Carter, but then they also have Warlord of Mars comics dealing with, you know, John Carter and his adventures after the novels or during the novels or whatever, you know. So that's it for this review. I'll probably come back and review the whole miniseries once it's completed. The next Edgar Rice Burroughs comic from American Mythology will be Carson of Venus meets Warlord of Mars. So that'll be coming next month, and I'll be reviewing that, and I've already got some of the Dynamite Warlord of Mars, Digisaurus comics up here to kind of prepare for that. And so I'm looking forward to that. And so like and subscribe for more videos. And until next time, careful on the moon, kids. You never know what's inside of it.